Alright, what's going on, everybody? So, recently I watched Kaguya-sama Love is War, and I did a review on that, and in that review, I talked about the fact that romantic comedies as a genre, especially when it comes to anime, that is really not a genre that is really sort of appealed to me prior to like recently. Like I've watched, slice of life shows and shows that have like romance elements in it, but like as far as like rom coms go for anime, I've always felt like they've kind of appealed to the female demographic and it just didn't really appeal to me. But I do like shows that have romance elements in it, and I do like shows that have that slice of life element in it. And with that being said, I liked Kaguya-sama. I enjoyed watching that show. I just finished that last week, and there's a character in Kaguya-sama, I Hayasaka, and her thing with her character. One of the things that I like about her character is the fact that there's kind of like two sides to this character. There's the side of her where she's at work, and then there's the side of her when she's at school. And I know recently there is the show out called Horimiya. I just actually started watching that last night. And so the main thing for those of y'all that don't know about Horimiya, basically the main selling point, the main premise, because really, if you think about it, uh, with Horimiya, it doesn't really have. It's a it's kind of a straightforward. It really is a straightforward rom com anime. It doesn't really have a gimmick. I mean, comparing it to Kaguya-sama and something like Orange. If you guys have heard of that, I don't know if many people. I don't even know if many people have even heard of Orange. But if you compare it to like Orange or Kaguya-sama, like it doesn't really have a gimmick. Its main selling point, or if you want to say that it has a gimmick, its whole thing is its subversion of its characters. It's basically the whole don't judge a book by its cover thing, and that's pretty much what they do, what the author does with all of its characters. And so with the fact that I liked Ai Hayasaka's character and that sort of thing that they were doing with Kaguya-sama, I decided to go ahead and just check Horimiya out because like I was just kind of like bored yesterday, didn't really have anything to do, so I was like, you know what, let me just throw this on, and I knocked out about maybe like 4 or 5 episodes. No, I think I got to like episode 6. I was watching the English dubbed. I know that's like blasphemy for a lot of y'all. Some of y'all like, ugh, how did you watch that English dub? But here's one thing I can say about this, and I'm just gonna go like I'm going off the cuff. With this video, no script. The only thing I'm gonna be referring to is my notes and everything. I'm just gonna give you all my first impressions of this thing. But one thing I can give the show, whether you're watching it in English or in Japanese. So like I watched the first 6 episodes in I think it's like first 6 7 episodes in English, and then like we're up to episode 11 now in the Japanese. Like I literally marathon this from like I want to say 7 8 o'clock last night to like I think 11:30 something like that, and then I said let me go ahead and just wait till today to watch the rest of it, and so I watched the rest of it today. I just kind of marathoned it. So I watched both the English and Japanese, and I gotta say, both, whether you're watching it English or Japanese, this is really good in terms of the voice acting. Um, I wasn't entirely like blown away by it, but I was like, yeah, as far as like the voice acting goes, they definitely got it. They got it straight with the with the English dub. There's a lot of these voice actors. Honestly, the only recognizable voice actor name that I see here, as far as the English dub goes, is Cena Robinson. And I feel like these voices, and some of y'all might disagree with me. For those of you that have read like the manga and everything, and I should say I haven't read no manga, no light novel thing, so I'm just coming in. I'm really just coming into this thing kind of fresh. But I gotta say, like the voices really match the characters, and whether you watch it English or Japanese, I think you're gonna have a good time with this. But so before I started watching the show, I ran across an article that said something like Horimiya is one of the best rom coms of the past decade, and I ran across a few videos and stuff praising the show. And I gotta say, I kind of disagree with that article and with some things that I've kind of seen just floating out there. There's some stuff in here where I feel like they could have did some stuff better in this. Like I said before, I like the rom com genre as far as like anime goes. I haven't really dipped like I'm just been dipping my toe in it with like Kaguya-sama and stuff like that. But I have, like I said, I've seen shows with romance element in there, with the slice of life element in there. Like I've seen enough of the elements that are in this show. I've seen it done. I feel like I've seen it done better in other shows. So there's just some stuff in here that for me personally, I'm just like, yeah, y'all shouldn't have done it this way. Y'all could have this particular scene could have been done better. But like overall with my like overall experience, I would say like just based off of my overall experience, I would say the show is pretty good. Like I wouldn't like it didn't blow me away overall, but there are some there's some good stuff there. One thing I do have to praise, just one thing I want to praise just off the bat is just the art style. That's the first thing that I kind of that's the first thing that I obviously noticed. This being an animated show, obviously, is the art style. I like the art style. The character designs, I can even praise that. Character designs look cool too. And then also the opening. The opening. I actually listened to the opening prior to watching the show, and my first impression of the opening was like, okay, this doesn't really tell me a lot about the show, but it's a really good opening song. And I honestly, after watching this for an entire day, basically, yeah, like I fell asleep after watching this. I fell asleep after like marathoning it and everything, and I lied to you not. This song was just stuck in my head the whole time. So, yeah, that opening, not just the song itself, but just the opening sequence. Just the opening sequence was really good. It was good. So that's another thing. That's another good thing I can say about this. But just to kind of get into things. So one of the things that I gotta say, this being a romance, this being a rom com, this being a show that's, one of the primary things about the show is the romance. If you get the romance wrong, especially with the lead characters, yeah, you got a problem. So, with our lead characters, so for our main protagonist, we have Kyoko Hori, who's essentially the pretty girl who gets good grades that all the dudes want to get with. And then we got Izumi Miyamura, who's essentially he's the weird emo kid, the socially awkward dude that like barely anybody knows anything about. Like everybody just thinks he's kind of strange. And so, like that's their school persona. Now outside of school, they're completely different, like I said before. And essentially, what brings these two characters together is one day Izumi brings home he brings home Kyoko's brother after he falls. He gets hurt, and so he brings her brother home. Her brother, what's his name? Sota. Yeah, Sota. So Izumi brings Sota home, and then Sota ends up taking a liking to Izumi, and Izumi constantly ends up, after that, Izumi and Kyoko, they talk for a bit. They kind of build up this rapport very quickly, might I add, and we'll get into that very soon. But they end up becoming friends. They end up talking, and then afterward, Kyoko gets Izumi to keep going by the house just for Sota, and then they end up becoming friends, and then it ends up being more than that. And that's kind of that's like the main setup with this. So with these two characters, because I have a lot to say in terms of their relationship, but as far as the two characters go, I would say this at least, they're at least fleshed out. The stuff with Izumi involving what happened to him in middle school and elementary school, and how the other kids have always treated him, and how he was a social outcast. Like once you get into all that, once they get into all that, and then you start to realize, okay, yeah, that's why he's doing all that. Like that's why he has all the piercings and stuff. Like it starts to make sense, and I thought that stuff was good. I don't think it's as good as if I have to like compare it to if I had to compare it to something like, I really don't think it's as good as the Yu Ishigami stuff from Kaguya-sama, but I do think that it's good for this show. I think that was good. Kyoko, they got a little bit of something going on with her character. They kind of allude to something to where it's like the mother and the father really aren't there for her when it counts. They kind of allude to that, once she gets sick in that one episode. But something I will say that I liked about her character, like at least within the first few episodes, is how essentially there is this motherly, there's this kind of motherly old soul kind of thing to her personality that I kind of feel like they dropped, after the first few episodes. Like during the first couple episodes, like we see that she takes care of her brother Sota, and that motherly quality, it was something that I liked about Naho and Orange. So that was something that I also liked about Kyoko here. But like I said, I kind of feel like they dropped it. They did kind of do it again with there was this one scene with Yuki and Ishikawa. At school they were like doing a group project or whatever. There was that one scene where I kind of feel like they kind of kept it there, but then other than that they kind of dropped it. But yeah, like I said, the characters, like those two characters, they're fleshed out. But in terms of their relationship, in terms of the main Horimiya relationship, I think it's kind of weak. I don't think they do a good job of establishing it. I don't think that I honestly don't think that these characters, like, to be honest with you, and they sort of kind of bring this up a little bit, but I kind of feel like their compatibility is like, if I had to give it a percentage, it's like 10%. Like, I kind of feel like their relationship, honestly, in comparison to the other characters in this show, if I had to be completely honest with y'all, I feel like both the relationship and friendship that forms between Kyoko and Izumi, it's poorly established, and it's really not as good as the other relationships in the show. Surprisingly, I would kind of compare it to when you're like watching a battle shonen, and like the main character isn't the most interesting character. It's actually the other characters around him that are more interesting. That's kind of how I feel about the relationships, just in terms of the relationships in this. Because I feel like one of the strongest things, like early on, they kind of set up the two girls that are crushing on Ishikawa, Yuki and Sakura. Like that stuff that happens between them. Like I thought that was handled a lot better than some of the stuff. Well, I don't even say some of the stuff. A lot of the stuff with Kyoko and Izumi. Not only that, but just the friendship, and also then the relationship between, the relationship between Remy and Sengoku, and not just the romantic relationship, but the friendship that came before that, and then also just the friendship between Sengoku, Remy, and Sakura. Like I think that's a lot stronger. I think that that's a lot better written, and it makes a lot more sense. It feels more natural, or at least it seems more natural than Kyoko and Izumi. Because if I'm being perfectly honest, like for those of us that have watched like Naruto over the years, like we talked a lot of crap about Sakura getting with Sasuke. And like that, like low key, we gotta, like, we owe the character an apology now, because it's like, as soon as I saw that, like, there's a point where they really introduced this kink that Kyoko has, where like she wants Izumi to be essentially verbally and physically abusive to her. Like she's mentally, and I know it's an anime, I know it's cartoons, but I'm like, realistically speaking, this relationship wouldn't last long, guys. It wouldn't, and I know that they play it up for last, and I'm not trying to sit up here and act like I'm so offended by this or nothing like that, because I'm not. It's just not funny to me personally, and if I'm being honest, watching these two characters interact one on one casually by themselves, it's not as interesting as watching all these other characters interact with each other, and that includes Izumi and Kyoko interacting with characters, outside of that relationship. I mean, that's just how I feel personally. And since I'm just on the topic of comedy, I'll get back to the relationships in a second. But since I'm on the topic of the comedy in the show, for me personally, a lot of the jokes didn't land. There were some jokes that did land, but for the most part, its humor didn't really resonate with me too much. I chuckled a few times, but for the most part, a lot of the stuff didn't land for me. There was this one particular moment where Remy, she ends up messing up, and she starts crying, and like I chuckled at that. But other than that, a lot of the humor didn't really land for me. But anyway, it's just that when I look at the other relationships in the show, whether it be romantic or just a outright friendship between any of the other characters outside of that main relationship, I'm like, yeah, it's done a lot better with other characters. Like, for example, you have Sengoku and Remy. They bond initially over their love for books, and even the relationship that I thought they were going to be building up to between Ishikawa and Sakura, like that was forming slowly. And Yuki and Toru or Ishikawa, they already were friends in the beginning, but when Yuki finally like starts to be developing feelings for him, like it just kind of makes more sense. And like I said, and I hate to repeat myself, but it kind of feels more natural. And then even outside of just the romantically speaking, Sengoku, Remy, and Sakura, they both like the thing that's great about that relationship right there between both of those three characters is that Remy, Sengoku, and Sakura, they make each other better, or they help to alleviate the issues that they all have and that they show. And so for me, I felt like those relationships were a lot more interesting to watch, to see unfold, and were a lot better written. Especially with some of the stuff just in general that these characters deal with. I thought the Yuki and Sakura stuff was good. The whole thing with them wanting to get with Ishikawa, but the fact that they sort of felt unattractive, so like they were kind of hesitant about doing that. And then there's this for lack of a better word, there's this like contrast or parallel or whatever between like their actions, like with the whole thing with Yuki and how she's like never upfront about how she really feels or like what she really wants, and then she never succeeds at getting what she wants, so then she hesitates when it comes to trying to ask Ishikawa out, whereas Sakura at least, builds up that courage, has the courage to ask him out. And I think she wouldn't have had that courage. She wouldn't have had that courage if it wasn't for her friends, if it wasn't for Sengoku and Remy. So like I thought that stuff is good. Like the stuff to where they're dealing with the stuff to where they're like dealing with characters, their personal problems, their backstories, especially the stuff when they're focusing on Sengoku, Remy, and Sakura. I thought that stuff was good. Getting back to that main Horimiya relationship, things just go from 0 to 100 with these characters real quick. And I know some people might like that, but honestly, things don't feel, just in general, I felt like things don't really feel organic in the show. And just in general, also, I felt like some of the dialogue kind of lacked, it kind of lacked subtlety. And with these two characters in general, with their relationship, I felt like a lot of the things that they set up for, with like their first time holding hands, for example, or their first kiss, I thought that those were handled poorly. There really is barely there really isn't that much of a build up to them becoming friends, getting into a relationship to the point to where it just feels natural. It feels like they're not rushing things, because it really feels like the relationship is really rushed in this, in my opinion. And that's why I keep comparing it to the other relationships in the show, because when you compare it to some of the stuff that I thought that they were going to be doing with Ishikawa and Sakura, I thought that they were like slowly forming this relationship that I thought was gonna happen between those characters. But even when you if you go and look back at Remy and Sengoku's relationship, their friendship and then their romantic relationship didn't just happen so quickly. They bonded over their love for books and stuff. Like, some of y'all might think that I'm exaggerating when I say that the relationship between Kyoko and Izumi feels rushed, but think about it. Within the first 11 minutes of the first episode, Kyoko essentially tells this dude that I want you exclusive. She says something about the fact that she wants to be the only person that sees Izumi as he really is, and Izumi pretty much says the same thing about her. But here's the thing, they barely know each other at this point in the show. Like, he's only been over her house once at this point. Not only that, but then there's this scene in episode 3 where Remy sits down with Kyoko. Kyoko has to take her brother to school. And so they sit down together, and Remy's joking, and she's like, she essentially asks Kyoko whether Izumi's on the market, whether he's available, right? And then she gets very defensive. Kyoko gets very defensive. She's like, "Oh, you can't have him. I won't let you have him." And I'm just like, "Yo." And I know they kind of address this in the show, but that's just two points right there. And that's not all, because not only that, early on, because in most shows, like when the romance happens, when characters start confessing love, that might like happen later on. That might happen last episode of the season, mid-season, whatever. But it happens later on. They let these two characters develop a solid, friendship. They always establish, and this is something that I prefer to see is, establish that they have something in common. It's establish that that there are qualities about them, that there's qualities about the other person that they like, that there's some connection there's some chemistry there, but you don't get that with these characters, especially early on. Now there are a few scenes later on, once they start dating, once they're actually in a relationship, where the characters essentially talk about a few things that they like about each other, but then other than that, I kind of just feel like they should have took their time with it. They should have at least established that there is a connection there. Because if I'm being honest, the foundation for their relationship is very shaky. It's very weak. The setup for a lot of the romantic moments, early on, that could have been done a lot better. There's some stuff that could have been done a lot better, like the setup for them holding hands for the first time. That was terrible. That was bad. The first time, their first kiss, that scene was stupid, came out of nowhere. But I will say, like later on, they do the second time around, it's a lot better. The hand holding scene at night where the two characters they're walking toward Izumi's house. I thought that was done a lot better. There's this intimate scene in episode 7 in Hori's room that I thought was done a lot better there. I personally just kind of find the relationship kind of hard to get invested into, outside of all the stuff that Izumi has had to deal with, and then some of the stuff that they are alluding to Kyoko having to deal with, some stuff with her family, with her mother and father. Outside of that stuff, I just kind of find it hard to kind of get invested into the relationship, kind of based on how they have executed this, especially when it came to the setup for their relationship and their friendship at first. Overall, while I think there are some things that they could have handled a lot better with this show, I will say that the characters there is something for everybody. There's a relationship, even if you don't like the main relationship like me, even if you're not crazy about it, there's a relationship, there are characters there for you. There's stuff there that is interesting. There's stuff there that might be funny to you that wasn't funny to me. So I just think that this was alright. I didn't enjoy this as much as Kaguya-sama or Orange, but I do think that it's a decent show. If I had to give it a rating right now, I'd probably give it like a 7.5 for me personally. If you're really into romance anime, then I suggest you try this. You might like it, but if you're not, you might want to go and watch something like Kaguya-sama or Steins Gate or Orange. Something that has a gimmick to it, something where romance is part of it, but there's also something else there. Because I feel like this is more of a straightforward romance show, for better or worse. But yeah, that's just kind of how I feel about it. Let me know what you guys think about Horimiya in the comment section below. Whether you agree or disagree with any of my points, thanks for watching this video, because I know it was mad long. I'm out of here. Peace.